So I am so excited to talk about Scream 2 because rewatching these Scream films, I haven't seen them since 2015 when Wes Craven died. Because I wanted to rewatch him in the memory of him whenever he passed, which was unfortunate, really unfortunate. But going into the first Scream, rewatching it, I loved it and forgot how awesome and great the first Scream was. And watching Scream 2, honestly, I don't know what to think. If I love this more than the first one, or if the first one I love more, or if they're both equal. And for me, I guess I'd say that these two are both equal. Like, I want to say I love this one more than the first one, but the first one has so many fantastic moments as well. Honestly, these two movies do such a fantastic job of being companion pieces to each other. I really love how this plot, these characters, how this story about doing a copycat killing but connects all the way to the first movie in a perfect way, makes this really, truly one of the best sequels for a horror movie I think I've ever seen. I really do love this movie, and I don't get why it gets less praise than the first one. Like, the ratings for it, whenever it came out, critics thought it was good. They didn't think it was as good as the first one, but they thought it was pretty good and solid. But if people hate this, I don't get why. I mean, it's fine to have your own opinion, but for me personally, I just don't get in my mind how people don't like this one. But this is one of those reviews too, where I'm going to go in and talk about, basically go through the plot of the movie, which it's hard to, like, I don't want to summarize the whole plot, but there are so many things I love and want to talk about, so I'm basically going to summarize the plot. So bear with me, but I love this movie so much, I have to talk about everything about it. I love the opening. I love how, like the first one, it opens with a double murder again, but this time in a movie theater, because since the first movie, Gale Weathers did the book, and then it became a movie, Stab. So this starts whenever Stab is in its opening premiere. And these two characters, Maureen and Phil, which Jada Pinkett plays Maureen, which is awesome. That's cool to see Jada Pinkett in this, and she is hilarious in this. I love how this opening is so fun and entertaining. But it's so fun and entertaining because, like, her banter between her and Phil, I think, is great. Like, I think it stands apart from the first one. I love how her lines, like, she's hilarious because they're going to the movie to see Stab, and Phil wanted her to, and she's like, you know, I've got a paper to do. I've got, like, essays to do, and we could go see Sandra Bullock over at the other theater. And it cracks me up because Phil really wants to see this movie, and her response is hilarious, and she's a funny woman, where she says, like, this is going to be about some dumbass women, this dumbass white movie about these dumbass white women getting this dumbass white woman getting cut the fuck up. Like it's really funny because she's actually, like, she really genuinely, I think, is hilarious in the opening. I love Jada Pinkett in this. She's awesome. And I like just the banter between her and Phil. Like, I think that's really funny. And they go into this theater, which, yeah, it's annoying that this is the most unrealistic theater experience I've ever seen in terms of, like, I mean, I guess maybe at this time there could be theaters that were this sporadic and crazy inside the theater during the movie, but I don't know if that's how it goes, because I don't feel like theaters would have been that, like, would have let people literally run around and scream and yell the whole time. Like, I don't know what kind of theater would do that, but who knows? Like, there could be some that did that, especially for movies like this. If like I could see movies like, say, Star Wars Episode 1 or Star Wars Force Awakens, or like big blockbuster movies, like, getting applause and cheers like this, but, like, not the whole movie during, like, while the movie is being ran. Like, I feel like people would shut up then, but this is just like, people are not shutting up. It's just kind of insane how crazy this theater is. So it's kind of unrealistic in that aspect, but I don't care. But it makes sense, though, because whenever Maureen gets killed, it's like, you can't have her get killed and have nobody's going to notice because of all these people screaming and freaking out. But I thought it was funny how whenever the movie starts, stab, they have Heather Graham play Casey Becker. I thought that was a funny thing. And I thought it was funny how they movie-nized it, where, like, and that's a word, that's a real word I just said. But they made it to where in the first movie, Casey Becker is not taking a shower, and of course they do that, and it cracks me up that in the movie within the movie they make her get naked, take a shower, which is obviously a trope that you're gonna do. But I like how Wes Craven is joking with himself, like the movie he made, the first one, she's not doing that, she's just making popcorn and watching a movie. But in this one, she has to take a shower and get naked, which just cracks me up that like he makes fun of himself, because I knew he didn't want to do that kind of dumb cliched thing, and I thought it's funny how in the movie Heather Graham's character of Casey Becker does that. Like, that just cracks me up. And we get Phil's death, which I think is really good. Like, it's unexpected because, and honestly, like, I still couldn't hear it. I should have turned up my TV more because I put on the subtitles, because if on some movies I'll put on subtitles if like they're hard to hear and the audio is too loud, like the sound, but the voices are too low. But the audio on this, I put on the subtitles, and like, so I could tell what the killer was saying whenever Phil puts his head up to the bathroom stall. And it was saying something like it was using a lot of words related to mommy, like whatever the killer was whispering to Phil. And again, that's our first red herring to who the killer is, and we hear the word mommy a lot in this movie, and I love how it's so subtle, but like it's over excessive in how they use the word mommy. But I thought that cracked me up that they used the word mom so many times in this movie. But rewatching it, I was like, wow, they do it so they string along the word mom so many times in this movie because the killer is Mrs. Loomis. But they do a good job of that, where like you hear the word mom so many times that you don't factor in your head like that's who the killer is. Like, I just thought that was crazy how the writing is so good in this, like the first one. But yeah, Phil listens in. He hears something talking about like somebody's mom. Like, he hears that, and he puts his head up to the stall and then gets stabbed in the head, which was a really cool, like, quick death. I like that. I thought that was unexpected. And the Maureen kill is really awesome because, again, like I was saying with how this is a great companion piece to the first one, in this movie, whenever on screen, whenever Maureen is with the killer, who she thinks is Phil, wearing the mask, she gets stabbed, Casey gets stabbed in the movie. And I liked how that just does that back and forth where it's like the first movie, but it does a great job of changing it up, like with the Maureen characters getting stabbed, while Casey from the first movie, like this interpretation on that stab movie, is getting killed too. Like, I just thought that was really cool. And it really honestly hurts me to watch her die, like Maureen in the movie. Like, for some reason, Jada Pinkett's like performance in that opening scene is really damn good. Like I said, she's hilarious, and then she's got such a sad, like, whenever she gets stabbed, like, it takes a while for her because she gets stabbed, walks around all these crowds of people screaming, then she gets up on top of the stand where the screen is and screams out, puts her hands out, screams, then a reaction of her face close up where she's just like in pain, and then she falls down and dies, and it holds on her just sitting there dead for like a couple seconds. That's really awesome. Really great opening. I love it. I don't love it as much as the first one, but it still is a fantastic opening, because the first one is an opening you can't do again. But this is just as clever as the first one, because they're doing a movie within a movie while this new character is getting killed in the theater for that movie. That's just really cool. I love how it's that meta, but it doesn't like take me out of it. And then we get the opening with Sidney Prescott after the first kills, and Sidney Prescott wakes up. She gets a call from somebody you think is the killer, and the person asks, "What's your favorite scary movie?" And she says, "Who is this?" And he says, take a guess." And then she reads the caller ID, and it's like, Corey Gillis at blah 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 blah. And she's like, "Nice try, Corey. Hope you enjoyed the movie." And just like hung up. But I liked how she's kind of desensitized to it now, like that. She's getting these calls already, but she's like, there's nobody that's killing. But that plays out to where she and her new friend Hallie are getting ready, and she sees on TV Cotton Weary is on TV, because since the first movie, Cotton Weary has been cleared of being the murderer because he wasn't the murderer. And I love how that's the first inkling to Cotton Weary, because he's so important and integral to this one movie in particular. And then Sydney realizes that 2 people are killed at the Stab movie opening, so she doesn't know what to do. Like, she goes to Randy and is like, somebody butchered 2 people in a movie based on a real life thing, and like Randy's kind of whatever about it. But I like how Sydney immediately after this is just like, I know something's up. Like, she knows something horrible is going to happen. And there's a great scene in film class with Randy. I liked how they have the debate about violence versus real life, like movie violence and real life violence, because that is a thing that is always debated on. And I'm more on the side where I feel like that's not always the case, where people do horrible things because they watch movies like this. I feel like maybe there are a select few that are messed up, not able to actually differentiate. But I feel like most of the time, movies and real life should be separated, and they're not usually the case to where people do real life horrible acts. And there are some where people do, but not most of the time, I feel like. So I like that conversation. I like the conversation with them in the film clash about the sequels debate, where Randy's like, "Oh, sequels suck. They're inferior films," and then like they're like, Cece and Mickey, they talk to him and are like, "No, what are you talking about?" Like, referring to like Godfather Part 2, Terminator 2, Aliens, which Randy gets the line wrong. The "stay away from her, you bitch." That's not the right thing. It's "get away from her, you bitch," which the other guy said, and then Randy corrected him and it was wrong. And I think that they purposefully did that as a self-aware joke, like, "Oh, we know it's wrong. We're just purposefully saying it." I don't think Wes Craven would have got that wrong. In terms of writing it, I think he purposefully did that just to mess with us. But yeah, and we get our main characters set up. We get Sydney, Gale, and Dewey and Randy from the last one. And Sydney, again, just a great character. I'm going to go with... this time I'm going to talk about her story as the movie goes along, because she has a great build-up, a great story. She's a fantastic heroine again, but I'll keep talking about her as I review this. Gale is great again, like she's horrible like the last one, but she, by the end, gains a difference in how she acts, more so than the first one. And then Dewey comes immediately after this happens, just to make sure Sydney's safe. And David Arquette's great as well. And Gale and Dewey's relationship is great, is better than the first one. It's good in the first one too, but I like their scenes more in this one. And then Randy, you get back, who is great. It just he dies like halfway through, which is unfortunate. But whenever he's on the screen, he's great. And then we get Cotton, who again, like Sydney, I will talk about as this goes along, because he is very important to the plot, extremely important. And then we get these new characters who are red herrings, but they're really good characters, like the first one. Derek, Hallie, Mickey, and Cece's not really you don't assume she's a killer, but I liked all these new characters. They all have great personalities. They're all fun. Hallie I love because she's so fun, and she's such a domineering person like Tatum was. Like, she doesn't take shit from anybody. She cracks me up, and I like how she's so protective of Sydney, where even though she wasn't in the first movie, they become friends, I guess, since college. And they've had such a great connection. It seems like, even though you don't see that from before this movie, they've still got a great relationship like her and Tatum did. And I like Hallie more in a lot of ways, honestly. And we get Joel, who is this cameraman who realizes that Gale, in her book, that she explains to him that her last cameraman got killed. So Joel, I like how he's in it, and he's funny because he realizes this and says, "I'm out of here, I'm leaving." And he's the smartest character in any of these films in terms of like, "I'm leaving, I'm getting out of here, nobody can hurt me," because I'm not going to be like your last cameraman and get killed. Like, Joel's really funny in this too. Like, whenever Sydney punches Gale on camera, and then Hallie says to him, "Did you get that on film?" And then Joel just says, "Yes, I got that on film." Like, it's really hilarious. There's a great scene when Dewey is first introduced, where Sydney and Dewey are talking, and he's being protective of her and saying like, if there's a killer, like they're probably already in your life, already integrated into your life, like they know they're with you right now. Like, I liked how he's the protector of it. Like, I liked how he told her this truth that like there's somebody doing horrible things and they're probably connected to you, unfortunately. So I really like that, him being protective of her in that scene. And the scene right after this is whenever Sydney punches Gale, but it's because Gale literally brings in Cotton Weary, and Sydney has no idea about this, and Cotton thought that she knew, but Gale brings him in literally, and has them try to talk on like camera, like she literally starts the camera before she even tells them. So Sydney, of course, punches Gale, and Cotton's like, Gale, what are you doing? Like, I thought that she actually knew, like, this is going to be an interview. And it makes it awkward for Sydney, and I like how she just punches her again, like the last one. I think that's great. Or she just slaps her, I think, in this one instead of punches her, but it's still good. And the first scene with Gale and Dewey are great. Like, I like the romantic, like, the way they talk in this movie is awesome towards each other. They've got good chemistry. They're really fun, and they're married in this movie. I think after the first one they got married, or maybe it's this one. I can't remember. But either way, they got great chemistry in all of them. But I really liked the first scene with Gale and Dewey. God, I can't speak. Then we get to the CC build-up and death, and that's great. Sarah Michelle Gellar is awesome in this. I love her anyways, but she's great in this. The first scene, whenever she's on the phone and Killer calls her, like, I like how she kind of just, like, she doesn't get, like, she kind of does it in a way where it's different than, like, say, Casey Becker in the first movie, where the killer says, like, what if I want to get to know you, and then she just says, what if I want to say goodbye, and she almost hangs up with him. But I liked her banter with the killer on the phone. Like, I thought that was cool, and she gets annoyed, even though the killer in this one doesn't call her over and over. He just talks to her once, and I like how she just gets annoyed and says, okay, I'm kind of busy, do you need a message for somebody? And then, like, the killer just says, do you want to die tonight, CC? And that's a really scary line. Like, again, the killer in the voice is scary, and the lines he says is scary, just like the first one, like that. And that it's a really great build-up, because it does take its time to where the killer's in the house. She doesn't know what to do. She goes outside. There's static on the phone, or disruption on the phone, so she can't speak outside, or interference. And she goes back in, and then the phone just stops working. And then, like, she finds the killer. She runs up the stairs, stabs her, and she throws her out the balcony, and, like, she dies. But, like, that was a good build-up. And again, Sarah Michelle Gellar, great little part in this. Like, I love how she's like Drew Barrymore in the first one, where she's so she has a great performance in it, and really spunky and just really fun. And she just dies quickly, but I loved her performance in it. I just love seeing her in it. And then after this, at that party, Derek is considered a big suspect, like Billy was in the last one. Again, companion piece to the first one. And Sydney doesn't know what to think about that, because it was just like the first one, that Derek was the killer. And then Sydney asks him to stay away, and, like, she literally, like, is pushy about it. And, like, I understand completely her reasoning, because it's like, this happened once. What if it's going to happen again with Derek? And I love the scene after this where Gale and Dewey are investigating with the local sheriff, and they figure out that the 3 murders so far are a duplicate of Woodsboro, where Maureen Evans and Phil Stevens, Maureen Prescott, Steven, and then Cece Cooper, her real name is Casey, so Casey Becker. So all 3 of them are related to the murders from the first one. And I thought that was a really cool, like, starting point. I don't remember if they even did more characters that were... I guess they did, because I guess they did not in name. Like, Hallie dies, she's Sydney's best friend, she dies, like Tatum dies. Dewey gets stabbed again. Like, that, I guess. Like, it does kind of do the copying of the first one after that, but it does the name wise, the three names of the first three killers, or the first three kills are like the first one. That was a great scene. That was cool how they realized that those hints. Um, and then we get to the Top Gun, like, Derek singing scene, which I think was really, honestly, it brings kind of a lively fun to the movie. Even though it's a horror movie, it's got so much fun and fun personality to it, and Derek is, like, that's a funny scene with him and singing and dancing to Sydney. Like, I thought that actually did bring, because he dies later, that did bring a lot to care more about this character. Like, he's just fun and entertaining, and it makes you feel less like he's the killer. Even though, if you've seen this movie, you know he's not. But I thought that was a fun scene. And there's a great scene between Randy and Dewey where they're talking about everybody, like, who's suspicious. Like, I love the fact that they also point out again, like, there's one particular, they point out Hallie, and Dewey's like, no, that can't be it. And then Randy just says, well, that's the case, though. It's woman killers are kind of against the rules, but kind of not, in his words. And he says, like, Mrs. Voorhees was a terrific serial killer. And then it's Billy's mom, so again, another little herring to that. And, of course, they have the scene on TV while Dewey and Randy are talking, that fictionalized scene in Stab where Tori Spelling and Luke Wilson are playing Sidney and Billy, where they talk about the scene from the first movie about the mother, or about Sidney's mother, and how Billy's mother ran away, or abandoned him. So that plays into the mother is the killer at the end of the movie, but they do it so subtly where I just didn't even think about it at all. Like, that's great. And like I said, Dewey and Randy are just giving suspicions on everybody, and I like how they all give valid reasons why any of these people could be killers. Like, Derek could be because he could be like Billy. Hallie could just be because it's unexpected. And even Dewey thinks that Randy could be. Like, they have a great scene in that wherever they're at, Starbucks, Baskin Robbins, but they have a great scene there. And there's an awesome scene that I really love, like a great acting scene. Like, this is one of the best acted scenes in the movie, where Sydney is talking to the teacher director of the play that she's in, because she's part of a play. He's talking about how that, like, he says, like, you're a fighter, Sid, and then she says, I'm a fighter, and then he just says, I don't believe it, and then she just says, I'm a fighter. Like, she says it stronger. And I love the fact that he talks about, in this certain play, Cassandra, how she all saw it coming and was cursed, but she eventually stood up and fought, like, no matter what, that she was cursed by her fate, but she still will fight, which relates to Sydney, and I love how it just does that. It was her fate, and she accepted it, and she decided to face it and fight it. Like, that's just a great scene, an acting scene between her and that director, Gus. Like, that was just an awesome scene. And then we get up to the Randy build-up death, which I wonder if people don't like this because they killed off Randy. But honestly, I think that's one of the most ballsiest moves in the franchise, because if you've even seen a poster for any of these movies, that Sidney, Dewey, and Gale live through all of them. But I love the fact that they killed off Randy, because it actually gave this movie some stakes, honestly, even though, again, the main three don't die, but it gave off really big stakes. Like, anybody could die now if Randy died. The comic relief died. But I love that. And then there's a great Sidney and Cotton scene where, like, Cotton is pissed, and he's at the library talking to her about, like, I deserve an interview, I deserve to have my freedom. And Sidney just says no, and for her reasoning, like, she's like, the movie and the press are going to give you all the freedom you want. Like, can you just let us live on with our lives? Like, I love how Cotton gets pissed, and it makes it look like he could be the killer, too. Even though he's not. But it's a fantastic scene with Liev Schreiber, where he's trying to convince Sidney, like, we need the Diane Sawyer interview, please. Like, I need to have my freedom. But she does make a valid reason that, like, yeah, the movie and the book will set you free from like, this lie. But I love that scene. And then there's a great, big, long scene where Dewey and Gale are looking up camera footage, and then they see camera footage from the killer doing it, and then the killer's watching them in the actual auditorium. and they get chased by the killer, and Dewey gets stabbed, and of course he lives, but at that moment you think he probably might not make it. And at the end they say, oh, it's because of some old scar tissue from the last movie. That's a great thing to keep him alive, like a good way to keep him alive, a good excuse. But that scene between Gale running around in the auditorium, like, from the killer, like, that's really intense and really good, and I really think that's one of the best, like, thrilling scenes in the movie. And then we get to the awesome car scene where the two bodyguards are having Sidney and Hallie be moved, but then Ghostface kills both the guys, and they crash the car. And this is, again, no, actually, this is the most intense scene. I take that back, even though the Gale scene in the auditorium is great. But this scene is the most intense, where Sidney and Hallie both have to climb over the killer, who is unconscious because of the car crash. Sidney even honks the car, and it is a scary jump moment because you're thinking, God, I gotta be careful, and I gotta actually, like, they've got to make it through without him waking up or becoming conscious again. And it's an incredible scene. And they of course get out, but Sidney's like, I want to go back. I want to go see who the killer is, because if we leave, he's going to be gone before the police get here. So she goes back, the killer's not in the car, and then the killer gets Hallie. Great scene. I love that scene. And then Gale, like, in the auditorium, or I mean in the building, like, she encounters Cotton with blood, and she thinks he's the killer. And then she goes out to this Debbie Salt character who has been talking to Gale the whole time, throughout the whole movie, this investigator, or this reporter, I mean, and I really love that. And then Derek, who was taken because he gave Sidney his letter for his fraternity, like, necklace, all the frat boys, like, tied him up and left him there to be unconscious while he was drunk. But they left him up there on the stage, and the stage is where the movie ends. But then you find out who the killer is, and it's Mickey. And I love the fact that Mickey tries to convince Sidney that Derek was in on it too, which the audience would think that too. Like, he could be like Billy, like, he was literally the same kind of killer. He could be literally the same thing. And then Mickey just shoots down Derek and kills him. And Sidney, just in that moment, her character breaks in a way where it's like she realizes he was a normal guy. He wasn't like Billy. He wasn't horrible. And I love the fact that her and Mickey have this heated argument, of course, because Mickey just killed Derek. And I love this line. This is one of the most badass lines from any Final Girl ever, where Sidney, Mickey's talking about his defense, like, he's going to blame it on the movies. He's killed all these people, but he's going to blame it on the movies, and he's going to get all the fame and fortune he wants. And I love the fact that whenever Sidney says this line, where she says, you forgot one thing about Billy Loomis, and Mickey goes, what's that? And she just says, I fucking killed him. And then she gets that necklace that Derek gave her, slaps him, and then, like, knocks him out. Just runs away, and then Gale comes in, because Mickey's like, here's the number 2 killer, or here's my partner, and the door opens, and Sidney's like, because Gale walks in first, and Sidney's like, Gale, like, it could be her, but no, it's this woman that Debbie Salt woman, who is Mrs. Loomis. And I love how Sidney immediately recognizes her. She's like, Mrs. Loomis? And then Gale's like, I've seen pictures of you. And then Sidney says, like, yeah, this is like 60 pounds and a makeover later or something. So, like, she looks drastically different than probably what she looked like before. And I loved her being the killer. That is fantastic. She immediately kills Mickey too, her partner. Like, she says, Mickey, there isn't going to be a trial. Because Mickey said, the trial's going to be great. And then she just shoots him. And then she says, poor Mickey, like, that motive is so 90s, like, he's not going to be able to make anything with that motive. And I love the fact that she says to Sidney, Mrs. Loomis, is that I am completely sane. Like, you took my baby away from me, so that's why she killed everybody. And that just is great. And her motive is just revenge for Sidney killing her son, but her son was crazy. And Sidney points that out. She's like, you're as crazy as your son was. And I love her reaction where she's just like, was that a negative thing towards my son, towards my Billy? And and I love Sydney's response. Again, she's such a badass because she just says, "No, Billy was a good boy. You did a banged up job, Mrs. Loomis." And then this is the whole time where Mrs. Loomis has a gun pointed at Sydney, and she even says that. She says, "Don't patronize me with a gun, Sydney, or whenever I have a gun on you." And then I love the fact, and Laurie Metcalf is great in this movie as Mrs. Loomis, where she says, after this, she says, "You know what makes me sick? Everybody thinks it's all the parents' fault. Everybody thinks it always leads to the parents. Why don't you blame your own mother?" And then Sydney's eyes open really big, like it connects to the mother again, just like the first one. Again, a good companion to the first one, where it connects to the mother, and Mrs. Loomis says, "Your mother had took my husband and kid away from me, and you took my son away from me." And I love how Sydney even points out that the mom, like Mrs. Loomis, abandoned Billy, so it's like that's her fault too. Then there's a great fight between them both. And they have a really good fight until Cotton Weary comes and shows up with a gun. And Mrs. Loomis has Sydney with a knife up to her throat, like where they're at a standstill, moving around. And I love how Mrs. Loomis is this diabolical that she plans to like, she tells Cotton, like, just let me kill her, Cotton, and that means you could be the star. You could be the one who could finally get all the recognition you deserve. And then Cotton, I love how he says to Sydney, "That Diane Sawyer interview looked really good now, doesn't it, Sydney?" And then, like, she just sits and looks at him for a second. And he just goes, And then she just says, "Consider it done." So then Cotton shoots both of them. And then Sydney, of course, isn't shot. She gets up. But I love how then Gail, because she got shot, Gail gets back up. And there's a good jump scare where she pulls out of the bottom of the stage, and they look at Mrs. Loomis, who is dead. Gail, Sydney, and Cotton, and they're all saying like that there's gonna be one final thing. They're gonna come back, like just like the last movie where Billy jumped up, and in this one Mickey behind jumped up after being shot, and then Gail and Sydney just shoot him down. And then they look at Mrs. Loomis's dead body. Sydney grabs the gun. She just shoots her in the head and says, just in case she doesn't come, she won't come back. And I love that. That's awesome. The way that they kill the villain, the way that it's all resolved, the way that Cotton Weary is so connected to this. Again, they just did so much with a character that was shown once in the first Scream and had dialogue about him throughout the first Scream, but he is such an integral character and such a great character in this. And Liev Schreiber is just awesome in this movie. And of course we get to the ending where Dewey survives. Sydney gains more spotlight, but she just gives it to Cotton. They're like, "Sydney, what's it like to be a true hero?" And then she just says, "Go talk to Cotton, like he's the real hero." And then she sends them all to Cotton. So Cotton gets all the fame and all of the recognition that he thinks he deserved from being sent to prison for a year and thinking that everybody thinking that he killed Sydney's mother. And then Sydney walks off out into the college campus triumphantly while Collective Souls, She Said, plays, which I think is a really cool scene. I like how it ends with her just walking away. Which honestly, if this was the last one, I'd be totally fine with that, because I don't really like 3. 4 I do like, but if it ended this way, that would have been awesome. So I really love this movie, and I loved everything about it. I love it just as much as the first one. I feel like there's not any issues that I have with this one as opposed to the first one. I think that the killers are way harder to figure out in this one, because in the first one they do have really a big inkling that like it's just Billy and Stu, and it is, but this one they do a great job, especially with the thing with the mother, like bring the mother in after having Sydney's mother take away her husband and her kid, and then Sydney kills her kid. That makes a great way for the villain to be a killer, like towards Sydney, like to kill off all the people she loves because she killed her son. But she abandoned Billy, so I don't get her logic, Mrs. Loomis. But everything in this movie is great. I just love every single thing about it. So just rewatching it, this was just so great, and one of my favorite horror sequels ever made. So I love this one. Again, Scream 3 I'm gonna watch. I'll see what I think about it, but I don't really love it, but I didn't hate it either. But I'm just kind of about it. But it's not as good as the first two for me. So I really enjoyed this one, so I'm glad I finally got to talk about it. Next up is Scream 3.